Sufyan, how are you?
That was Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, the director of Gaza's Kamal Adwan Hospital, filmed in shackles in an Israeli prison earlier this month. Lawyers for Abu Safia, who was detained by Israeli forces in Gaza in December, reported this on his condition. Dr. Hussam Abu Safia was transferred to Offa prison. He was held in solitary confinement for 25 days and was subjected to repeated interrogations for 10 days. He has reported an incident during which he lost consciousness in his cell due to severe breathing difficulties and has lost approximately 14 kilograms since his detention. Dr. Hussam Abu Safia also suffers from heart muscle enlargement and has requested access to essential healthcare from Israeli authorities on several occasions. His requests have been continuously denied. Abu Safia is not alone. A new report by Healthcare Workers Watch shows that more than 300 Palestinian healthcare workers from Gaza have been detained by Israel since October 2023. These include 110 nurses, 85 doctors, and 50 paramedics, as well as administrative workers, pharmacists, and volunteers. 162 remain prisoners of Israel. And that's just the cases that have been documented. Separately, The Guardian and Arab Reporters for Investigative Journalism have interviewed a number of senior doctors who were detained by Israel. They were detained during hospital raids, at checkpoints, and from ambulances before being transported to Israeli prisons. Dr. Mohammed Abu Salmiya, director of Al-Shifa Hospital, gave this account of his detention. When I told them my name, they pointed their weapons at me and their laser sights at my head and chest, and I was immediately detained, as if they were waiting for me, as if they had seized a big prize. They beat me with rifle butts and chairs. After that, they poured sand over my head and shoved dirt into my mouth. I was on the floor on my knees, the blindfold, and they were beating me. After this, I was put in a vehicle, myself and many others piled on top of each other in a humiliating and degrading way. Everyone was screaming, everyone was crying out. We don't know where we're going. The beating was constant. Abu Salmiya went on to say this about his detention. Frankly, no matter how much I talk about what I experienced in detention, it is only a fraction of what truly happened. I'm talking about clubbing, being beaten with rifle butts, and being attacked by dogs. There was little to no food, no personal hygiene, no soap inside the cells, no water, no toilet, no toilet paper. I saw people who were dying there. I was beaten so badly, I couldn't use my legs or walk. No day passes without torture. Dr. Bassam Mikdad is head of orthopedic surgery at the European Hospital in Gaza. He spent 7 months detained in Israeli prisons, and he said this about his treatment. There were Israeli nurses and doctors there, but they wouldn't even look at you. I saw people with broken limbs, and the guards would pull them around. They would ask, "Where does it hurt?" Then beat on that injury. It was not just the beatings, but the way they treated us like we were not human. In Naffa prison, they kept telling us to howl like dogs. 2 doctors are known to have died in Israel's prisons so far. Dr. Iyad Al-Rantisi, a consultant obstetrician and gynecologist at Kamal Adwan Hospital, died at Shikma in Offa prison. Former detainees reported that he died from torture and severe sexual violence inflicted by Israeli guards in the hours before his death. The use of sexual violence in Israeli prisons was also corroborated by some of the doctors who have since been freed. Dr. Khaled Ser, a surgeon at Nasser Hospital who spent 6 months in Israeli prisons without charge, described this deeply disturbing case. A prisoner had a baton inserted into him. The assault was so violent that it caused severe muscle tears in his rectum. Even after his release, he continues to suffer. We performed multiple surgeries on him, but they have not been successful. In response to the report, the IDF refused to comment on particular cases, but made this general statement. During the fighting in the Gaza Strip, suspects of terrorist activities were arrested. The relevant suspects have been taken for further detention and questioning in Israel. Those who are not involved in terrorist activity are released back to the Gaza Strip as soon as possible. The IDF acts in accordance with Israeli and international law in order to protect the rights of the detainees held in the detention and questioning facilities. Kieran, really remarkable story. Obviously, it's particularly extraordinary because of the nature of the people at the receiving end of this kind of brutality. Obviously, always disgusting to read things like this, people being sexually assaulted, batons allegedly inserted up people's rectums and whatnot. But this is for a profession, people in medicine and health, which is generally seen as immune from war crimes and the kinds of things that are being reported here. Why hasn't there been more of a response from the likes of the UK and the United States, given that this is generally speaking an industry which is considered beyond the pale?
Well, I think depressingly the simple answer is that Israel is above the law in what it does. That's the simple answer. I can't think of anything else to explain it. Israel is above the law so long as it has the United States underwriting it in anything, virtually anything, that it does. Doctors are fair game. Journalists are fair game. And look, let's not forget that while Gaza was being bombed to smithereens, you had the world's leading international organizations, World Health Organization, everything up to the UN and the ICC, saying that very serious war crimes were being committed, possibly and plausibly in the context of genocide. And yet, here we are. Israel just issues bullshit statement after bullshit statement, laughing at everybody who reads it. Will you comply with international law? I mean, you could hear the laughter all the way from Tel Aviv. And doctors, it makes sense that they're going to target doctors. Why? Because doctors try to save lives. They don't want Palestinian life to continue. The people perpetrating these kinds of monstrosities and obscenities, the like of which most people cannot even begin to imagine, let alone realize or conduct in their own lives. Those are the kinds of people, doctors, etc. They're trying to continue, underwrite, protect Palestinian life. So it makes perfect logical sense to me that the colonizer and the genocide purveyor would be taking out things like doctors, teachers, etc. And I just want to say one final thing, which is that my own brother has spent the majority of his life, he's Palestinian, has spent the majority of his life in and out of Israeli prisons. He first went to an Israeli prison when he was 12 years old, and he's now 33. And for most of that time, he's been inside Israeli prisons, sometimes out, sometimes allowed out, then taken back in for some spurious or arbitrary charge. And when the doctor, in the testimony that you read out there, Aaron, said, even if I talked for however many, whatever it was, days or weeks, I could not begin to describe 1/10 of what they've done to me. I'm really sorry to say that I recognize that in what my own brother has said to my family members. And he went in when he was 12, so you can only imagine. What else is there to say? You run out of negative superlatives with a country like Israel, and at this point in time. I think I'll leave it there, but yeah.
That's really powerful, Kieran, and thanks for being so upfront about what's happening with your brother. Really sad story. And I think you're right. The reason why doctors, nurses, paramedics are seen as legitimate targets is the same reason that 80% of rubbish collection trucks have been destroyed. This is critical infrastructure for the survival of a society, the survival of a people. If you don't have access to basic sanitation, if you don't have access to basic education, of course, basically all the universities in Gaza have been blitzed. If you don't have access to healthcare, if your medical personnel are either injured, locked up, or too intimidated to do such important work that they leave the country, and of course, this is a very lucrative white-collar profession elsewhere, makes sense. If you don't want to live like this anymore, you get out as quickly as possible. That is how you kill a people. And if you look at the UN definition on genocide, it's precisely what's happening. And I think you're right, Kieran. They do this because they can. They do this because they can get away with it and there'll be no consequences. Despite Keir Starmer's words about Ukraine, the exact same thing is happening in Gaza. Actually, I'll be quite frank, much worse, significantly worse. And that double standard at the heart of our political life in this country has never been more marked.